to Anger here on Inquiry. Welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about an insult that has been frequently leveled against me by my deadbeat dad, Anthony eBay, and his accomplices. Yes. Give me a second. Welcome. Shimoge here. Shimoge here. Got my papers here. The first time in a while. Which papers will I be in today? Let's go with these papers. I hit the paper, I get the cash. I hit the paper, I get the cash. Kabranam Naga. Calling in all of my relations. Yes. Thank you to my returning viewers. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chimoge. That's my given name. My metaphysically correct name is Chimoge Nke Rom. My government name is Chimoge Chijoke Ibe. Another white structured name for me is Chimoge Chijoke Ibe Nwoko. Ibe is a shortened version of the name Ibe Nwoko. There's been some calamity in my patrilineage, which is why that discrepancy is there. And that is also why I'm talking today. Anyway, what else? My matrilineal village, the village in which my matrilineage was born, is Ebem Mohafia. That's in West Africa. The village that I want you all to use as a reference point for my patrilineage is the village of Aji, which is also there in West Africa. Yes, they're about 3 hours apart by drive. They're in the part of West Africa that is north of the sea and west of Central Africa. Yes. And I should also note south of the Sahara. Yes. You can look them up. Where was I born? I was born in the Shining Sector, Raminkelu. Yes, in Latin, the language upon which English is based primarily. You could call it the Rome of Purgation. I call it Rom. That is the national name, but we do not do things naturally in the world today. Again, part of why I'm speaking again today. What do most people call the location I was born? They call it Southeast Washington, D.C. Yes. I currently live in the Rome of this world. The Oshun of this world. Yes. The part that most people call Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I stand today. I have 11 viewers registered on the screen. I saw higher numbers flashing before. Every view is a blessing. Thank you very much. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me give 2 other facts about myself. 1, there's almost nothing I hate more than being disrespected. If you disrespect me and you do not repent, I'll never forget it. 2, all kuka nebiozo. I always come back for my justice. Yes, that's why I'm speaking today. Anyway, let me get right into it. The title of this anger segment, let me take something out of my pocket. The title of this anger segment is Anthony Drove Up the Rocky Mountain Road. What is that? That refers to something my deadbeat dad Anthony did that makes him a hypocrite and makes him insulting me especially egregious. What am I talking about? I'm talking about how when Anthony was in his 40s, when I was a small child, he was so down bad for money that he chose to drive up a dangerous Rocky Mountain Road for money. Yet he has the gall to insult me financially when I'm in my 20s. Let's get into it. Asking for extra support from my ancestors here. I need to be clinical. You see, Anthony, since I was in my early 20s, Aries has insulted me by saying I'm financially irresponsible. This is unfair. Let me just begin chronologically. I would say this financial insult actually began before I graduated from college. Again, I'm currently 28 years old. I forgot to mention that earlier. I was born on January 2nd, 1998. Again, I've talked before about why I don't like giving the exact date all the time. It's unhealthy. At the same time, people should be able to automatically know it. I'm not a fan of this culture of hiding the age. Okay, people do it for weird reasons. I'm not that guy. January 2nd, 1998. I was born during Capricorn time. I'm a son of Capricorn. You know what you're getting if you disrespect me. A wave of anger, and that is righteous anger. That is just anger. Righteous anger, just anger. But that's redundant. Anger is always just. I've gone into that philosophically. Look at my other videos if you're confused, like Anthony. Anyway, when did this financial insult of Anthony's really begin? Oh, and I've registered a comment. Thank you very much. Every comment is a blessing. You see, I remember when I was a junior at Harvard College. And again, I just want to say it again. I'm not Mr. White Society credentials. Okay. I wish I didn't go to college. At the same time, I finished on time. Okay, and that is the most prestigious college in the world. It is what it is. So if you're playing that game, which is obviously very related to the financial game that Anthony wants to play, I'm high up there, and I'm only 28. You can't count me out. Anyway, when I was a junior at Harvard College, Anthony told me that he wouldn't pay for graduate school. I take this as a financial insult because he was implying that I was a financial burden to him. This is complete nonsense. Okay. So that's where I'll say it began. That is the Ekwensu. Here's a Madioha. There was a health emergency in 2020. Again, I was at Harvard from 2016 to 2020. Graduated class 2020. Because of the health emergency, everyone had to leave campus in March. I come back from Cambridge to Maryland. Again, that's where my childhood home was. I was still living there at that time. Okay. I read comments at my discretion. Come back to the family home, which was a calamity, but not my fault. Living there with 3 other people. Anthony, who's my biological father, my mother, and then my 1 younger sibling who I don't even like referring to because it's traumatic. Vile individual. Anyway. Anyway. I come back home. And again, I want to note this again. I had health problems. These are not my fault. You see, my parents had mismanaged my health my whole life. I had health issues my whole life. Everything I accomplished was in spite of those health issues. But they just intensified. So by the time I got home, I could barely move and barely get out of bed. Okay. Once I was up, I could do basic things, but it took a long time. And I want to note, I was available in case of emergency. I could wake up like that in case of emergency, but then my energy would fall. I had a lot of fatigue and I had various other health problems. So I was not in a state where I could just be going on 10 constantly throughout the day. That wasn't me. Okay? So I come back, and mind you, I hadn't graduated yet because school had not ended. About a month before graduation was in May, at least a month. Anthony was telling me that I should have a job. This was crazy for 2 reasons. 1, that's not necessarily standard to have a full-time job before you've graduated college. Crazy. And 2, there was a global health emergency. The job market was not normal, and we were not even able to move normally, okay? A lot of institutions were closed in Maryland. going out in public was difficult. I also want to note Anthony's a medical doctor, so he should have known better than that nonsense. But anyway, at least in theory. So, that's Amadioha. And then Amadioha married Neptune. Ikenga Amadioha. Okay? The number of the movement is 3. If you have the movement inside the Good Husband of the People, that's Neptune, who originated the Good Husband of the People. Anyway, what is Neptune? After I graduate, again, I graduated, but I want to note we couldn't even have an in-person graduation due to the global health issue. Okay? The in-person graduation ceremony was held in 2022. I had to wait 2 years to have the in-person graduation ceremony. So even though I officially graduated, I still felt a weight on me. I want to note that. Some things are spiritual. Anyway, I graduate digitally because of the health emergency. Not my fault. About a month after, Anthony's attacking me when I'm down. Mind you, I'm still very sick. Yelling at me as he always did, saying I should get a job. And I want to note, Anthony was both vague and unreasonable. He was mentioning, and I just want to note, this is a controversial line of work, but I don't think everyone who does it is bad, okay? I think it's just complicated. He was mentioning Wall Street. He was saying you can get a job on Wall Street. These are his words. And then the other thing he was frequently saying is the phrase in my language, chaw something. Or is that really my language? Yeah. Chaw something. Chaw, what is that? That is a very crass way of saying the phrase chota, which means find. And then he said something, find something. No detailed advice, just find something, and then you can get a job on Wall Street. Mind you, that was not what I studied. I'm never interested in going into Wall Street. That's just not my thing. And those are not easy jobs. Obviously, those are very competitive jobs. So to just tell a sick person during an exceptional time for the world to just either get a job on Wall Street or charge something is an abomination. And I also want to note, there's a lot of physical evidence of my health issue. For example, I had an issue breathing for a long time. Obviously, the breathing was not zero. I want to say this because Anthony would frequently insult me with nonsense related to my breathing. The thing he would say most frequently is that, and again, this is just to show how much of an oddball Anthony is, he would say that when he was listening to my bedroom door or whatever while I was sleeping, he could hear me sleeping, therefore I was breathing. Tufiakwa. I'm not going to go into the obvious. I'm just going to say this. My breathing was impaired. It made it much harder for me to sleep. And I was in the process of finding a resolution for it. Okay, I've been to some doctor's appointments. I was waiting at various points for other doctor's appointments with a specialist. Okay, it took months. Again, anyone who's been through that kind of process knows that it can take a long time to get a doctor's appointment with a specialist. And then eventually, I was told the best option for me was to get a nasal surgery. And again, it wasn't a very invasive surgery, but it's still surgery. And I ended up getting the surgery in March of 2021. That surgery ended up actually taking me out for a month. I had intense pain in my throat due to the breathing tube. Okay, I couldn't actually eat. Basically, it was very painful. Then I was told I couldn't do things like drive for a month. Again, I'm not a fan of driving, but at that time, I was driving to get places when I needed to. I couldn't do that. Made it a bit more inconvenient. So anyway, that was a hard, long process. So anyway, show us something. We had Wall Street and show us something and constant attacks. So, let's just move through the entire health emergency period. Again, my health did not improve significantly. Unfortunately, even after the surgery, my breathing issue did not improve as much as it needed to. Okay? And I just want to note it took me some time to realize that the surgery hadn't done what it needed to do, because you can't assess the results of a surgery necessarily the day after. Okay, that wasn't my thing. So that took some time. Other health issues took some time. And this whole time, I was just trying to get myself into a state where I could move and think as I needed to. But I also want to note I was slowly as I could setting up work and thinking of how to work. One, I was conceptualizing my media company. Here you're on it, OZ Bang Woko. Check out the rest of the branches. And two, I was also thinking about other lines of work I could do. But I just was not able to get the quote unquote job that most people have standard. Let's look at a standard 9 to 5 job. What does that require? One, it requires you to be at attention for your boss. As soon as your boss says jump, you have to say how high and then do the jump. That's just the reality of a standard 9 to 5 job. And two, you have to be able to basically keep going with consistency for that 8 hour period. I do not have the health to do that. I also want to note it is not in my personality to be subordinate. So, in order for me to be subordinate, and I've done it before, my health has to be in tip top shape, else everything will collapse. So, if I'd even attempted that, wouldn't work for a long term period. Short term wouldn't even help. I also want to note, for most of this period, as a compromise with Anthony, I was working part time, and I want to say this again, part time at his medical office. But I want to note two things about this. One, this is not a standard 9 to 5. That thing doesn't even open. At least at the time, it didn't even open at 9. Even if he officially said it opened at 9, it was never open at 9. Two, for that period, I was working part time, and I wasn't. Well, when I was there, it was stressful. Let me say it a different way. I was coming in 2 days a week, and like one of the days there were basically no patients there, something like that. So that is not the standard exertion, and even that was tiring for me. But I did that as a compromise so I could minimize the amount of times Anthony would start an argument. Let me also talk about the home challenges I had. You see, Anthony had accomplices in. Oh, why do I feel like this thing is freezing? Anyway, Anthony had accomplices in making my life difficult. Let's talk about what was going on in the house. Arguments that did not include me. My younger sister got in some very explosive arguments with Anthony, destroyed my rhythm and day. I had to once break up a nearly physical altercation between the two. So that was something else going on. She would also argue with my mother. That was a lot. And then Anthony is always looking for fights with people. Again, frequently insulting my mother, something he's done throughout my life. And then attacking me and even that other person. Again, just because someone is evil doesn't mean they deserve everything. Because Anthony was the worst entity in that house. Forgive me, as soon as I mention that entity, I'm in pain. Ooh, Kabrinam Nogoha. Then I also want to talk about filth. That house was filthy, and I was really the only one cleaning it consistently. Why'd I dig into my energy reserves to clean it? Because I didn't want us to be overrun with pests. I want to note two aspects of filth. One, junk all over the house. There was junk all over the house. Most of it was not mine. And because the junk belonged to the other people, I really couldn't move it. People were saying, don't worry, I'll organize this. Don't worry, I'll throw it away, whatever. They wouldn't. It's their property. I can't do anything. 2, the sink. The sink was always full of dishes and food particles. Anthony was the biggest contributor to this. Anthony has a bad habit of not finishing his food and then putting the plate that has a lot of food on it in the sink. Frequently has attracted ants. Frequently I had to clean into the night. And I want to note at that point, I was trying to follow a more classic sleep schedule. I now find that that doesn't work for me. It's better for me to sleep on a rotating basis. But at that time, based on what I knew, I was trying that. It was very disrupted. And again, my energy was down. So in order to prevent that house from becoming the jungle in terms of the types of species that were there, I had to clean. And no one else took that responsibility. People were comfortable with us being overrun by other categories of life. And I'll leave it at that. Then let's look outside the home. There was calamity in my family. I want to just note one big incident to give you all an idea. I call this, let me just call it, what should I name this event? I'll just call it the Rumble Overseas. Anthony is one of 6 siblings. He's the oldest. He uses that to dominate and or try to dominate, but it does not go well. All 6 siblings fight among themselves. 2 of those younger siblings, the second oldest brother and the third oldest brother. The third oldest brother is Magnus eBay. Got into a physical altercation in our patrilineal reference point village of Aujurat. This was in 2021. This caused widespread calamity throughout our family. Some of my youngers contacted me in distress. Okay, the elders disturbed the youngers with their schoolyard nonsense. Long story short, I had to get on the phone and tell people to stop. I had to resolve a dispute between my elders. This was one of the most, if not the most stressful events of that period. This is just to give you an idea of the things I was dealing with while I was sick. All this time, Anthony is insulting me by saying I'm financially irresponsible. Now, let's look at the end of this medical emergency period before I moved to Atlanta. Anthony had an emergency at the office. He asked me, he really demanded me to start working full time until he filled the gap. I looked at it and I said, you know what? That office might close based off of what's going on. And even though Anthony has, for most of my life, have been making a lot of money, and I'll get into that. Again, the Rocky Mountain period was not most of my life, but I'll get into that. You see, Anthony frequently wastes money. Okay, he buys cars that are unnecessary. He buys clothes that are unnecessary, and then will be complaining about the bill. So he wastes money and he also lies. So based upon that, and then also, quite frankly, based upon his own health profile, because Anthony runs around doing various things, but he does not take care of his health. Okay, I've mentioned before how he doesn't eat properly. Okay, he also does not maintain a schedule that looks healthy, and I'll just keep it like that. So I was like, okay, based upon that, there's a potential for some trouble. Let me step in for a few days. So I said, okay, let's dig into my strength and work more. Long story short, because Anthony did not sufficiently restock his employment, I ended up working that job for 2 months. I stayed there because I wasn't sure what was happening. But I want to note again, one, I knew that couldn't go on forever. And for any stupid people out there, I just want to note, just because you can wake up your Super Saiyan form and work something for 2 months doesn't mean you can get a quote unquote classic job long term. That doesn't make sense. Two, because Anthony had begged me to work, and I want to also note this is still a family job. Okay, so even though that's work, there is a higher degree of mutual need. Okay, it's not like if I just got a job from someone I'm not related to. There's not as much mutually need. So it's more likely that that person will tell me I'm not needed. Okay. So, because of all that, that was a crazy, unsustainable 2 month period. And because of how Anthony, as the boss, mismanaged the office, I was overworked. I was working on average over 50 hours a week. And I was doing it because I wasn't sure what would happen if the office closed. I'll keep it at that. And I want to note, during this period, one, I was underpaid. Anthony, I'll just say for now, he underpaid me. And two, he underpaid me and he disrespected me. The most infamous instance of disrespect, because throughout this time, while I was working over 50 hours a week for him, because he was unclear and also looked sloppy and in a bad spot, and I'll get into this in the future, well, on this live stream when I talk about Anthony's hypocrisy. Because of that appearance, right, I'm working for him. He's insulting me by telling me still to get a job. I'm working for him so much that I barely had time to keep my eyes open. And he's telling me to get a job. And the most egregious instance of this is a time when Magnus eBay, one half of the Rumble, came to Maryland to visit. And again, I don't know what was accomplished on this visit, but he came there to watch his other family members breathe. Again, family is unprofessional in the world today. Family interaction should have a goal. You're not just there to stare at your blood relatives. What are you going to learn about your gene pool? The genes are in your body. Just get a DNA test if you're that confused. You should be doing things. But anyway, Magnus eBay comes to Maryland. And as I'm on my way to work at his older brother's office, he sits me down and tells me I need to get a job. And again, I want to note my family operates on a rigid elder respect nonsense protocol. So because of that, I humor them. At the time I humored them, I no longer humor them. That's the only reason I listen to that. And also given Magnus's character, and I want to note, I'm not saying I'm a weak individual. I'm just saying that I'm not a fan of the Rumble. And I want to note, there's nothing more vile than having a rumble in the jungle with your blood relatives. But because of Magnus's character, and I want to note to date, I still don't fully know everything that went on with the Rumble. I haven't been able to fully investigate it. But because Magnus, by his own admission, was one half of the Rumble in the Jumble, okay, the Rumble overseas, I just said, you know what, let me just nod my head and wait for him to go away. But anyway, that nonsense happened. And then Ele Biarofuma. I've talked about this before, I'll just be brief. My younger sister decided to make an irresponsible move to Atlanta. Because of that, I was between a rock and a hard place. Long story short, in order to prevent her from getting herself into more trouble, I decided to move to Atlanta. Then a new era of disrespect began. Once again, I could be up in an emergency, but I was not able to exert my will on events consistently, especially throughout a day, and definitely not throughout, say, a month. Unhealthy. I had health issues. I was actively working towards those health issues and slowly putting together my own work regimen. But I could not work as I wanted to. And I also want to note the work issue was not a matter of, how do I put it? So you see, the primary problem was not really me being unable to work for someone else. It was just not me being unable. Forgive me, English is terrible. When I start to think well, the English falters. If you think clearly, you destroy English. But anyway, let me just say it like this. The problem was overall energy. If my overall energy was at max capacity, I could easily have worked for myself and made enough money to support myself, to the extent that the idea of supporting oneself makes sense, because that is really vile Republican nonsense. No one stands alone. But anyway, long story short, Anthony's financial insults continued throughout this period. When I was in that situation with my younger sister, and that individual ended up being more of a handful than I anticipated, and I'll leave it at that. And this is before it emerged as a euphemism in my lineage. Beginning of 2023, again, this was all throughout 2022. I'm fighting. End of 2021, 2022. Beginning of 2023, the euphemism emerged in my lineage. I was knocked down by Jesus. Mind you, Jesus is an evil entity. I'm just saying that in case you didn't get it there. Whenever I say Jesus, I'm referring to the euphemism. Jesus, euphemism, same thing. Anyway, I was attacked by the euphemism. I'm down. Anthony's insults still continue. Because of the nature of the attack, I couldn't even speak of it. But I indicated that I was having problems with the one who emerged the euphemism. That was enough for them to at least lay off their insults. And quite frankly, they should have looked under it and said, you know what, let's help Shimoge out. Let's help our Harvard-educated son out. You know, it's very funny. Anthony and his clan, Anthony Nivea, are obsessed with the trappings of white society. They pushed me all my life to obtain a high degree of college education. I graduated from Harvard with a joint concentration, same thing as a double major, and they just disrespect me more. Why is that? I'm still investigating. All I can say is there's a lot of evil in their minds. But these financial insults continued at a very desperate time, and I made it clear to them that one, I was sick. I didn't have the ability to work at enough of a rate to have, and this is where it becomes a bit of a coincidence, how much money they want me to have. I remember when I was still in Maryland, there was one job I was looking to apply to. I ended up not applying just because I didn't have enough time and energy, but I was gearing up to apply. The job would have had a salary of about $40,000 a year. I was saying as a starter job, that's good. They screamed. They wanted $100K. They thought that a black man living in America in his early 20s was obligated to make $100K a year. What kind of nonsense is that? That is not standard. Why were they so obsessed with me making a non-standard amount of money? Anyway, in Atlanta, I'd been making it clear that when I was sick, too sick to work at enough of a rate in my own desired lane to make money at the extent that would have kept them quiet, and then also too sick to do that in the quote-unquote job lane, which would have come with the additional stress of abuse. Abuse because, one, I'm a black person. We just have to be honest. These 9 to 5 jobs, I mean, they abuse everyone, but I'm signifying. Black people get abused more than normal. And then 2, I am not a subordinate person. I am the leader. I'm greater than the leader. I'm the good husband of the people. I'm the god of thunder. I'm the king of the jungle. Everyone has different personalities. This idea that everyone is a bolt on a conveyor belt that has to keep their head down is wrong. Some of us are natural leaders. That's me. If you put the leader under the followers, there will be an explosion. You see, Anthony goes against nature. He cuts off his beard. He cuts off all his hair. He's racist. He told me all my life my hair was ugly. He would glorify our white oppressors in the house and demonize the black race. He doesn't acknowledge the realities of the injustice in this world. He goes against nature, both on the granular level and on the higher level. He does it in a way that explodes crime in the world. That is not unlinked to why he was telling me to destroy myself to make money. You see, I kept telling him about my personality. He wouldn't listen. And I want to note, Anthony is not a naturally subordinate person either. But he's being a hypocrite. Anyway. Forgive me, let me take a pause. I'm remembering very grave events. So, let's talk about the next era of disrespect that happened. The euphemism became worse. My plan was to improve my health enough to make enough money to move out of that situation. And then, once I was in the independent spot, to speak. Long story short, that didn't happen as soon as I wanted, and also the euphemism got worse. So at some point, I had to push through the pain, talk about what had happened, and ask for help. And I want to note, the worst thing that, well, let me put it like this. Part of what happened is that in about September of 2023, the euphemism did something in the apartment we were living in. Again, it was not my choice to live in the same apartment, but I was put in that situation. The euphemism did something, and I'm still not 100% sure what they did, but they did something to make that place unlivable for me. As soon as I would get in, I would faint. So I couldn't work, because I was working in the apartment. Okay. So I needed another place to stay, and then on top of that, the euphemism was moving in line with Jesus. It was trying to destroy the lineage. I asked for help. I received no help from my blood relatives. I received no help from my elders. I received no help from, unfortunately, my peers and younger. Okay, it was a complete failure of the lineage. I received no help from Uncle Akwensu. I received no help from Okorobia. I received no help from Shima. I received no help from even my mother. And then Elebiera. Operation, what I'll call now, Operation Atlanta Hotel Room. Orchestrated by Anthony. And again, a thread throughout all of this is that I was financially irresponsible. And then I went into the period where I was without a permanent place to stay, and I've told you about the other things. Now, let's rewind. Why am I talking today? I'm talking to defend my honor and my manhood. Anthony came at my honor and my manhood, and he continues to do so. And he's assembled a gang who does that. They do it by targeting my finances and my mental health. They're linked. I'm going to focus primarily on my finances. They're saying I'm financially irresponsible. Let's review the evidence. They're saying I'm financially irresponsible because at the moment I'm not making a lot of money. And they've been saying that since before I graduated from Harvard University 7 years ago. What's behind all that? Let's look at the evidence. First, there's no such thing as financial invincibility. You see, there's a lot of Republican nonsense out there that says there's some people who will always get money no matter what, and or should always get money no matter what. There's no such thing. Saying that you can guarantee 100% that you'll get money is like saying that you can guarantee 100% that someone will talk to you. Because at the end of the day, other people give you money. Doesn't make sense. All you can talk about is probability. But tendency is not destiny. There is no 100% guarantee. That's a basic principle that people miss in the world today. There's that. Then we have to look at health. I was sick and I'm still sick. And this is physically, not mentally, for all you fools out there. Anyway, my health is better than it was when I graduated from Harvard. Let's just start with that point at 2021 when Anthony was talking about not paying for graduate school. And I want to note, my whole life, he was telling me that I should go to some sort of graduate school, especially medical school. All of a sudden, before I've even graduated Harvard, I won't pay for graduate school. Okay, obviously I had to take that into account into my planning. All right. So, and I just want to note, I don't regret not going to graduate school. I don't like school. I'm just saying that was the vote of non-confidence. So when I have that vote of non-confidence, it makes it harder for me to operate. If he at least said he would be willing to pay for my graduate school, or at the very least just had some sort of reasonable and logical asusu, I don't know how to put it into English, around that. I could have said, okay, he still has confidence in me. Maybe something else is going on. No confidence. Illness. A sick person cannot be expected to work at the same capacity as a healthy person. And I want to note, even though Anthony is a medical doctor, he seems not to understand health very well. He seems to use himself as a baseline standard of health. The insulting talking point I heard from him most is that because he's moving, I should be moving. One, Anthony does not even move well. Terrible example. He's late to his own job every day. And I'll leave it at that. But two, we are different people. And I also want to know, just because Anthony's older than me doesn't mean I will eclipse him in every health and strength metric. That's crazy. That's just crazy. We're different people. And then the idea that it's not a red flag that I'm competing with him in terms of energy is also crazy. Okay. So, health is down. What am I establishing here? I'm establishing that I'm not financially irresponsible because there are things outside of my control that negatively impacted my ability to obtain wealth. One, just general inzabu, general randomness, general back and forth nonsense. The fact that no one is financially invincible. Two, my health. Three, the global health emergency that occurred around the time I graduated and extended really throughout 2021. That negatively impacted my ability to move. Again, that was an unprecedented situation for the world. Four, my family calamity. That was a lot to deal with. Again, that will negatively impact one's ability to obtain wealth, especially because your family is supposed to give you wealth. And I want to say this, parenting does not end at 18. That is a deadbeat mentality. Your family is there to give you money in an emergency. It doesn't matter how old you are. And I'm going to return to this later. And then 5, the realities of discrimination in the world. I'm going to lump all the discrimination into one, but I'm just going to note them. Discrimination against black people. Yes, Anthony, racism exists. You cannot just look at a black man and say you will succeed. You see, Anthony once met former President George Bush, shook hands with him, and he displays that picture prominently in his office. I think he thinks that because he was next to George Bush, the Republicans like him. Anyway, and I just want to note, I've been very critical of the Democrats in the past. I maintain those criticisms. Okay, they're not just two options at the same time. One, Republicans are in office right now. I focus on them more. My goal is to wake people up to current inefficiencies in the system and current realities of evil. One. Two, the inner life of the philosophy of the Republicans is just way worse than that of the Democrats, to the extent the Democrats have a philosophy. The idea that you should blame yourself for everything, and or when you're up, blame everyone else who is down for their own problems, is evil in its purest form. That is just evil. That's just evil, and I'll leave it at that. So anyway, I mean, the inner life isn't everything, but come on. That's just refuse. I usually don't even go into that because I mean, let me just move on. I shouldn't have to explain in detail why Republicans are bad, but anyway, let's go. So one, racial discrimination. You can't just tell a black person that they're going to succeed no matter what economically. That just doesn't exist in our world today. Obviously, we can create a new reality, but it just hasn't happened yet. Another form of discrimination. And yes, I want to note this is novel. Kabru Namnal Goha. I don't want to introduce too much new information, but I have to. There is discrimination against natural leaders in our society today. Everyone is trained to be subordinate. There is not much space made in society for natural leaders. I'm a natural leader that is not favored by society, both in that quote unquote so-called job market and outside. 3, discrimination against unhealthy people. And I want to be careful here. We obviously do not want to say that disease is a good thing. It's not. At the same time, we should not just attack people because they're sick, but that's what goes on in the world today. Because I have an illness, I get discriminated against in the job market. And then if I talk about this in detail, say in a work situation, there will be further discrimination. Say I ask for some sort of work accommodation, likely not given. Not my fault. And then 4, I just want to talk about what I will call discrimination against human life. Yes, it's another kind of new one, but I'll just put it like this. If we have a situation where in the United States of America, commonly regarded to be the richest country in the world overall, again, there are different metrics you can look at, some might say different things, but overall this is seen to be the gold standard of wealth. If we have a situation where consistently about 35% of people are outside of the labor market, as in they're not even looking for work, and then of those who are considered to be in the labor market, maybe about 10% or so, well, let me say like 5 consistently are not working. Again, it's like, say you have a percentage that, say you have like 65% of people who are considered to be in the labor market, but then only like 62 or so have a job, quote unquote. That's a lot of people who are not working. That is such a large number of people that you cannot just blame individuals for not quote unquote having work. I'm very critical of the masses, but the masses are not that bad. There's inefficiencies in the system. I'll leave it at that. So anyway, when all that is going on that's outside of my control, you can't just say I'm financially irresponsible. And I also want to note this. Again, I'm thinking as I go. This is to bring in the mental health aspect. Anthony Ebe and his accomplices. And I want to bring in one new accomplices. You know about all the family members. And again, I want to make this clear. Anyone who I'm related to, no matter how bad they are, has my patience more than non-relatives. So to those of you who are related to me, even if I have leveled heavy criticism against you publicly, my wish is for you to repent. It is not efficient for me to just have evil people languishing in my bloodline. Repent. But anyway, but before you repent, I will just treat you like an evil person. You are in my mental ajafia, and the physical one can follow if, things do not happen. Again, I'm not talking about anything illegal there. Absolutely not. But I'm just saying. The ajafia can be used to signify that someone's life is not to be emulated. That is the point of the physical ajafia. But right now you're in my mental ajafia. Okay. AJOFIA. Look it up. It's not anything unethical. Think of the practice of cremating someone and scattering their ashes. I know there's some people who do it in a positive sense. I'm of the belief that that's really for someone who you didn't favor while they're alive. Again, that's perfectly legal and ethical to cremate someone and put the ashes somewhere. Ashes can be placed in the ajafia. Abu Muhammad. Anyway. What am I saying here? I'm bringing in a new accomplice. You know of my blood relatives. There's an individual I've referred to before as the alien and also Dr. B. This is a therapist I was seeing. To my knowledge, a psychiatrist. Again, it can be sometimes hard to know the exact, degree that a therapist had. But this is a medical professional. I don't want to go into this too much, but I have to. Saw this individual in the beginning because of couples therapy. Again, I was in a relationship, and then, the woman I was in a relationship wanted us to have couples therapy. Again, I was not a fan of couples therapy, but I made a compromise. Went to this person to begin couples therapy. Long story short, the couples therapy did not end up happening. But Dr. B, aka the alien, offered to give me free therapy. And I want to note, going to therapy and or other equivalent modalities does not mean that you are crazy. Again, we live in a world where people do not look after their mind, and that's why they do stupid things. Look after your mind. Now, obviously, there are a lot of gaps when it comes to mental health care. There's discrimination. There are improvements that must be needed, but I suggest people get in where they fit in. That's where I'm going to leave it for now. So for me, going to routine mental therapy is the equivalent of getting a physical or something like that. It doesn't mean you're already sick. You're just trying to make sure the engine's running smoothly. So that was my idea. And again, I want to note the primary reason I did this, because I'll just say it like this. I was not that obsessed with Dr. B, but sometimes someone you're not obsessed with is better than nothing. I was not that obsessed with Dr. B, but he offered me the service for free. So I said, whatever, it's free. Long story short, Dr. B behaved very strangely and unethically. And later, I found out he was talking to Anthony without my permission. Anthony somehow weaseled his way into this health arrangement. Now, there are many unethical things Dr. B did. Again, destroying English here. But the one I want to note here, because it's on topic, is financially disrespecting me. He kept bringing up my financial situation in a disrespectful and illogical manner to suggest I was financially irresponsible. And I'll leave it at that for now. And it seemed that that behavior was linked to his association with Anthony. Okay. So why am I bringing that up? These people who have formed against me to disrespect my honor, my integrity, my manhood, my personhood, have been saying that my lack of, and I'm thinking of how much to go into this, because again, it's not common practice to just open up your wallet and show it to the world. But, these people have me on the edge of doing that. These people have come against me to say that me not having money is a result of a mental illness, to Fiacqua. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I'll put a pin in that. The point is, Hanekoin shit. They're talking nonsense. Now, let me go into Anthony specifically and the title of this live stream. Anthony drove up the Rocky Mountain Road. Anthony's financial standards for me are out of line with the example he has shown. This, 1, makes them illogical, 2, makes them disrespectful, and 3, makes me question what's behind it. Again, this is always very strange, but it has to be done because of the dichotomy that Anthony has set up. Anthony is my biological father. And I keep throwing in the word biological just to, 1, note that there is no love lost there, and 2, to note that metaphysically he's not my father. Let me quickly explain that. Just because someone conceived you, and as a man, does not mean they're your father. They actually have to parent you well. If a man does not parent the child well, they're not the father, they're the deadbeat dad. And that's even if they were there. Staring at a child is not parenting. Yelling at a child is not parenting. Being next to the child is not parenting. You have to do many sets of things that are positive. You see, we have a stereotype of the deadbeat dad in society today. That the deadbeat dad conceived and was not there. We can note that one. Although I do want to note there are cases where that person's not a deadbeat dad. 1, sometimes them not being there was not their fault. Maybe they were injured. We have sometimes cases where people pass away after conceiving, and then also are unfairly kept out of the child's life. That does happen. So that person's not necessarily a deadbeat. But obviously you can't parent to the optimal extent if you're not there. But we have to acknowledge a lot of those fathers who are not there are deadbeats. But they're not the only deadbeats. I want to draw your attention to the trend of the deadbeat that is there. And this deadbeat is hiding. And oftentimes this deadbeat is hiding because they have cash. We have a society where we believe cash rules everything. People frequently say cash rules everything around me. You're obsessed with the cream, but you're listening to my scream. I don't have that much money right now, but I'm making your mind move. Think about it. Anyway, it's lazy to just think that money makes everything. So to think that a man raised a child properly because he was running around the house on his phone while the child was in the house and he had money in the bank account is nonsense. And I'll leave it there. Anyway, Anthony, my biological father, let's look at his life trajectory and how it contradicts his financial demands of me. When I was born, Anthony was at least 38 years old. This is already a cause of disconnection because Anthony has a habit of holding me to the same standard he holds himself at any given moment in time. I wouldn't be surprised if the day I was born, that 38-year-old at least man was looking in his pocket and saying, Chimoge needs to get his weight up. Now, what am I saying here? Anthony, when he was my age, was not in a better financial position than me. Let's start at the age he criticized me first in this way. When I was 21, and he began hinting lack of financial confidence in me by saying he would not pay for graduate school. And this was done in a mean way, okay? This was done in a vile way. This was not saying, oh, I think you're fine. No, this was like, you're a financial burden on me. When I was 21, I was at Harvard. When he was 21, he was still in school. I wasn't doing worse than him. Yet he leveled that criticism against me. When I was 22, I graduated from Harvard. What does that mean? I was out of school, so I was in position to make money if I got my health together. That was a challenge. When Anthony was 22, he was in school. And I want to note, I'm not sure of Anthony's exact real age because he lies. I think he might be older than 38. I want to be careful here, but it's possible. When I've asked him about his exact age before, he's gotten distressed. So anyway, but the age I've gotten is that he was at least 38 at my birth. What does that mean? Right now he's at least 66. And I want to note, and this is relevant, he had children later than the average person, and certainly later than the average person in the part of West Africa where our family's from. Anyway. So, 22, he's in school, at least. I believe he was still in medical school. That means he's not making money. And there's no potential for him to make money in that moment because he's on the school track. What does that mean? At 22, I had a higher potential to make money than him, even despite my health illness. So financially, I was better positioned than him. And again, I want to note, comparing yourself directly to your birth father is crazy, but I have to do this crazy comparison just to highlight how crazy and disrespectful Anthony has been. I respect my good elders. I just don't see very many of them. Anyway, now, again, let's just go from 2022 to age 24. I was in the same position, bad health. Anthony, according to his story, was also in medical school, same position. Again, I had more potential to make money than him. 25, that was the year I was homeless. And again, I want to note, I'm noting this because I know there are a lot of snobby people out there, but also, how do I explain this? I'll just say it like this. I don't want to signify on myself because at some point, suffering, can make a person look bad. So I don't want to signify on myself. When I say I was homeless, I don't mean I was sleeping on the street. I was not on the street. It's just I didn't have a permanent place to stay. So that was bad. All right. Anyway, during that period, which was very traumatic and stressful, 25, I was actually making money. Just ironically, not enough to get a permanent place to stay. It was crazy. It's like, I might have had, say, 1,000 in the bank account. I needed like, 2K or something to get a permanent place. It just wasn't quite there. Anthony at 25, and again, this is where I'm not sure. He might have been in medical school or he might have been in residency. I'm not 100% sure. But I think he was probably still in some school trajectory. So I guess he had a place to stay because he didn't have a family that abandoned him. But not making money. I just want to note there's a bad habit of looking at someone who's undergoing a school training process as if they're a financial plus. I just want to say this. I'm not necessarily dissing people who are undergoing a long school training process, but the reality is they're not making money. So to look at that person as financially different than someone who started their own business, which is what I was, and I was doing this while I was sick, to look at that person as financially different in a positive manner does not make any sense. That's 25. And then let's go from 25 till now. I keep thinking this thing is freezing. Anyway, from 25 till now, where I'm 28. Again, it was, well, really I was 26 when I got into my current living arrangement, which had many challenges, but at least I had a, well, let's just say it's different than when I was homeless, still unstable. What am I saying here? At this point, again, I have high potential to make money. My business is operating, and I've made money through the business. Anthony, from this period, again, he might have still been in medical school. No potential to make money in the moment. If not, maybe he was just out. That's where it ends. What am I saying? If you look at Anthony at the periods of his life where he was at the same age as the periods of his life that he was criticizing me, you understand what I'm saying? Again, look from ages 21 to 28, because I'm 28 now. This insult began at about 21. He's not really doing much financially better than me. And again, I'm simplifying this comparison to make a point. Then let's look at what I call the flags on the play, the ages where he's older than me. Anthony likes to compare himself to his younger son, even in the past. You see, what's the point I'm making here? I'm making the point that by his own account, my dad was having, even if he didn't say it explicitly, even if he tried to mix it up, my dad was having financial difficulties when he's even older than me. So because of that, it's unreasonable for him to expect me to be rich. And I want to be clear, his expectation is really that I'm rich. That's what he's intimated, and that is also the vibrations that his accomplices, both in my family and outside, have given off. I want to draw your attention to two phenomena. One, Anthony moving for work, which suggests that he was not financially satisfied where he was. And two, Anthony engaging in dangerous work and or going through dangerous conditions to work, which suggests that he's financially unstable. One, Anthony moved multiple times to work. This is according to his own account. He moved first from Nigeria to England, and I just want to note, I usually don't refer to it as Nigeria because I'm not a fan of the lines on the map, but I just want to speak quickly in a way everyone understands. He moves from Nigeria to England. He moves from West Africa to England because he was not satisfied with how much money he was making as a doctor. This is after he was a doctor. He's tried to claim he was satisfied, but then in his own words, he said that the family did not have enough money and he thought with additional training he could earn more money. If he was satisfied with the amount of money he was making, why would he move from Nigeria to England in really like the 1970s, 1980s for work? That doesn't make sense. You will not catch me moving for work. I'm not that down bad. Okay. So again, that's financial instability. Then after doing all that, he moved from England to the USA. Again, he said he touched base briefly in Nigeria again, but he moved from England to the USA essentially because he wasn't satisfied with his financial opportunities. He said he didn't get a work opportunity in England even after all that training, and then he still was not satisfied with his work opportunities in West Africa. So then he moves to the US. And I just want to note again here, obviously there's a lot of racism framing this situation. I don't even want to go into that. I'm not saying that Anthony's even fully responsible for all the stress and financial whatever else that was going on that was influencing his decision to move. I'm just noting hypocrisy. And I've been talking for over an hour now. You know, I just can't say everything. Anyway, hypocrisy. Anthony's in the US. He's in his 30s at least. This is where I really start to get angry. Because he frequently compares himself to me, and it doesn't make sense. I want to talk about two things. First, when he was undergoing medical training and studying for medical exams in the US, the amount of hardship. I want to give you a story he always tells. He says that because at one point he was living in New York, he was eating one slice of pizza a day while studying for a medical exam. And that if he didn't pass this medical exam, he didn't know what would happen. Obviously, there's a big financial aspect to this. You were in your 30s eating one slice of pizza a day in New York, yet you want to criticize your son in his 20s for not being rich. What is going on there? That is an insult. That is aurala. That is an abomination. That is a sin against the land. That is sacrilege. The elder who insults his child insults himself. The trajectory of the son is influenced by the trajectory of the father. And, you know, it's hard to put the term deadbeat dad into a proverb. So forgive me there for using the term father. Let me say it like this. The trajectory of the son is influenced by the trajectory of the biological father. If you are eating one slice of pizza in your 30s, maybe, just maybe, I won't be rich in my 20s, dad. Then let's look at the period when I was born, when he was in at least his late 30s and at some point 40s. Let's just say before I was 5, because really I don't have clear memories before I was 5. He said that at some point after he finished medical training in the US and I was a small child, or at least, this was like at least maybe before I was born. Again, I was born in 1998, maybe a little after. He was working 4 jobs. Again, you were in your late 30s at least, probably 40s, working 4 jobs with a bunch of medical degrees. And then you want me to be rich in my 20s. You had enough mercy on yourself to tell that story, at least in part. Yet you have no mercy on your Harvard-educated son. Anthony, what is your issue? Then I also want to note one other thing and I'll be gone. Anthony told the story of a time when I was small and he would have to drive to a far-off location to work. This driving was up a mountain and there was a sign saying, "Warning, rocks may fall." My dad was in his 40s, driving up a rocky mountain road because he needed money. What does this mean? He did not have enough opportunity to have a safer work trajectory. That is his trajectory in his 40s. Yet he wants my trajectory in my 20s to be that of a billionaire. That's not fair. I'm going to wrap it up there, but I want to note one other thing. I'm here to zol my mwoke. It's hard to say in English. Anime zol mwoke nepa abumama yoha. I'm here to defend my manhood, my honor, my personhood. So because of that, I have to raise your eyes a bit. I'm talking about money here because they use money to disrespect me, but money's not everything. Anthony eBay, in his quest for money, has missed some things. I want to note two things. One, general social connection. Anthony eBay does not have a lot of positive social connections. He said himself before that he has no friends. And I've not seen very many positive social interactions between him and other people. That's not good. You can't live like that. And two, children. Every child is a blessing. You see, I don't want to reduce children down to their financial implications. That's bad. But it goes without saying if you're intelligent, but I want to know there are a lot of unintelligent people in the world today. Children are a financial blessing. Children are your social safety net. Children are supposed to take care of you, and generally they do when you get older. If you sever your ties with your children, that can't happen because you're toxic to them. Someone else has to take care of it. But if you're a good parent, they're your social safety net. You don't have to be looking to the government. You see, a lot of people want the government to be their child. And I want to make clear, I'm even signifying on my own generation. There are a lot of people in my own generation who do devalue children and then go out crying about we need the government to do this and that. We need the government to give me money. You're all worked up about the government giving you money. You're already envisioning your retirement, which is unhealthy when you're my age. You're already envisioning it. And I hope you know what I mean. Obviously, you have to plan to be stable in your future, but you're not supposed to be envisioning your retirement in that kind of detail. That's unhealthy, and I'll leave it at that. You're already envisioning your retirement. You're fantasizing about your idea of retirement where you're down doing nothing. You want the government to be putting money in your pocket. And at the same time, you devalue children. Why are you doing all that work? Having children is not work. There's this misconception that having children is work. A child is a person. A person doesn't need that much help. They just need a little help. And that child will not be a child forever. They'll be your child forever. They'll not be a child forever. Once that child is an adult, you don't have to wait on them hand and foot. And I want to add, most children do not even like being waited on hand and foot. Just be there to back them up. Anyway, children. I've talked about this before. I'm just going to talk about it briefly again, then I'll be out. Anthony eBay missed his milestones, and he was part of a trend in my family of missing the milestone of having children. And this was in large part because of his career. He's even said that he didn't think he would get married because of his medical career. I was at least 38 when he was born. What does that mean? I'm his oldest child. What does that mean? He had children later than the average person, even in the US, and I want to say much later than the average person in Nigeria. It's unusual in Nigeria to have your first child at 38. And I want to note, I'm the oldest child of his two parents. I'm the oldest of all the grandchildren from those two people. His siblings have a range of ages, but some of them are close in age to him. What does that mean? They also had children late. I just want to note, none of them had children at a reasonable time. So that's what's going on in that part of my lineage. And again, there's a spiritual relationship here, I believe. In the rest of my lineage, and I want to especially turn to my matrilineage. A lot of other people either had children late or do not have children. And I've seen two things related to this. One, the devaluing of children. A lot of children get abused. People don't see the value of children. They have them late and then they abuse the children. And then two, children are left without resources. This is not good. Anyway, thank you very much. What's my point here? I'm a good person. I'm a good man. Don't disrespect me just because the wind prevented a little bit of money from entering my pocket. I want to add one thing in here. I've mentioned before that Anthony and some other accomplices have sent me some money. As far as I'm concerned, that is business income earned. They're watching my content. I know they are because I've received many messages from them complaining, insulting me, and asking me to take it down. And then, without me asking, they send me money. They're just bad customers. Anyway, thank you very much. Please be a good customer. Buy my art. Buy my merchandise. Subscribe on Patreon, and you can donate. You can donate on PayPal and on Cash App. Please also patronize the businesses of other people you know. And just be a good person. And remember, never disrespect a big man. Thank you.